Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Now, for today, we're going to be talking about the fantasy football hidden gems of Week 5. Now, for Week 5 of the regular season, I scoured the earth in search of these powerful hidden gems in order to complete my already deadly fantasy lineups. Now, if you're any familiar with the Fantasy Gauntlet, you'll know these 6 hidden gems are all powerful separately, but if you bring them together to create the Fantasy Gauntlet, you will be able to rain down fantasy points all over your opponents this week, and that's what we're here to exactly do. I'm here to tell you where I found these hidden gems and how to use them to your best ability in order to help you win this fantasy week. Hey everybody, how's it going? Okay, so to begin, we're here, the Gauntlet video at the end of the week, as we usually do. Here it comes. Here it comes, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen this, if you're first time watching the Gauntlet video, in the flesh, I have collected the six hidden gems, stones, etc., in order to complete this gauntlet. And I'm going to tell you exactly where I found these hidden gems so that I could, maybe spread the love, spread the wealth for this week in fantasy football. So, to begin, as you can see on the screen, we have here good old Duke Johnson. Now, why do I have Duke Johnson as a hidden gem, as the power stone for this week? Now, I traveled to Cleveland. I traveled to Cleveland this week in order to harness the power of the power stone and use Duke Johnson in a flex position that many people may not be considering him as of right now. So, here's my thought process behind the idea of perhaps playing Duke Johnson this week and perhaps him outplaying his projection as far as Week 5 goes. Now, Duke Johnson is most accurately known for being that PPR third down back who's been extremely successful, at least last season for sure, right? Duke Johnson was a top 12 running back in full PPR leagues last season, in which he was used as mainly the Swiss Army knife of the Cleveland Browns. When Deshaun Kaiser basically couldn't move the offense, he would always check it down to Duke Johnson. Now, this coming season, thus far, Duke Johnson has been irrelevant, right, within the Cleveland offense because of the acquisitions of Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, just as of late this past week has come along and somehow, managed to score some fantasy points that just seem pretty crazy. 3 carries, 2 touchdowns. Anyway, so Duke Johnson going forward, and especially here in Week 5, why do I think he can potentially be a hidden gem for this week? They play against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, here's the thing about the Baltimore Ravens. Against the run, right, the Baltimore Ravens, if I'm not mistaken, have given up the second least amount of fantasy points to the running back position thus far. They have only allowed one single running back to go over 10 points in half-point PPR scoring formats, okay, thus far this season. Now, also, they only allow 82 yards on the ground per game. Okay, so all signs point to the Baltimore Ravens being able to, with their stout defense, stop the running game of the Cleveland Browns. Now, what's going to happen when the running game of the Cleveland Browns, surely slows down and is not able to produce? Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw the ball. They're going to bring Duke Johnson into the game. And I feel like, especially with the usage that Duke Johnson got last week, playing almost 40% of the offensive snaps, which was an increase on many of the weeks prior. I think Duke Johnson going forward is a fantastic piece and a hidden gem this coming week. I like Duke Johnson. Consider him as a flex start in a very deep league. But again, people, understand, these are not guys that I'm coming out and saying you have to start them this week. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you my opinion that these guys will perhaps maybe outplay their projection. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're still bums. But then sometimes you get Tariq Cohen's that pop off for 27 points. Anyway, we're moving on. Let's continue, shall we? I'm telling you, Duke Johnson, don't sleep on him rest of season. Okay, let's move on. Let's go and collect the Tesseract. The Space Stone, in which I found this in Oakland, California, with Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr has one of the more favorable matchups this coming week in fantasy football and in the NFL. They play against the Los Angeles Chargers, and by all means, the Chargers have not been great on defense this year. In the fantasy perspective, right? They've given up the 10th most points to the quarterback position thus far this season, while also giving up the 4th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Now, I think they've given up like the 15th or 16th to the tight end. Great. Jared Cook's going to have himself quite the game also. So the way I see it, this coming week, Derek Carr playing against a very sketchy defense. Honestly, they're just not great. I'm going to come out and say it. I'm not going to say, oh, they're sketchy. No. This is not a good defense. The Chargers do not have a good defense. They continue to get injured. They don't have their stars. Without Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram coming off the edge at the same time, you're going to have trouble. And the Chargers have just never been really known for having a great defense. They had a little bit of a stint last season in which they just continued to have really good games defensively. But that was just a culmination of good matchups, good plays, and a lot of Nathan Peterman interceptions. Anyway, so as of right now, I think Derek Carr could have a good week coming off that fantastic performance fantasy-wise. I think that's a really big confidence booster going into this week. As of right now, the Chargers give up just around 26 fantasy points to the quarterback position in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, which is about 2.5 touchdowns per game almost, and about 300 passing yards. So the way I see it, Derek Carr with a fantastic offensive line, Kelechi Osemele, Rodney Hudson, Donald Penn, Gabe Jackson, the rookie left tackle, they're going to be pretty protective up front. They're going to be able to give Derek Carr time, especially when the pass rush is not as elite as it usually is from the Chargers with Bosa's injury. Unless I'm somehow wrong and Bosa plays this week. It always happens to me. But as of right now, I think Derek Carr, a great matchup. I've been talking about him all week. He's the space stone for this week. Consider him for your fantasy lineups if you're struggling with injury, bye week, etc. Maybe you have a player in a bad matchup. Derek Carr is my suggestion. All right, we're moving on to the reality stone. Now, where did I go and collect this reality stone? I found this reality stone in Green Bay, Wisconsin, by the name of Ty Montgomery. Okay, Ty Montgomery making this here gauntlet that much stronger for this week of the fantasy season. Now, what do I think Ty Montgomery is specifically going to produce this week? The reality of the situation is many of the wide receivers, if you haven't heard already, of the Green Bay Packers are injured, right? Randall Cobb last week was out. He is on his way to being out again this week, okay? Geronimo Allison, who was the backup, the third wide receiver for majority of the season, who stepped up as a second wide receiver last week, concussion, and has another undisclosed injury that I got to look into. But as of right now, going through concussion protocol, it doesn't look good for Geronimo Allison either. On top of that, Davante Adams has a calf injury that he sustained at practice earlier this week. So the way I see it, okay, worst case scenario, none of these receivers play. But that's not going to happen, right? I see Davante Adams for sure playing, Randall Cobb being out, and Geronimo Allison most likely not playing. Okay, where does that leave the Green Bay Packers passing offense, right? It leaves it in the hands of good old Davante Adams, Old Faithful, Jimmy Graham, and in my opinion, Ty Montgomery, a converted wide receiver to the running back position, a guy that in the passing game can be utilized down after down to produce fantasy points. Now, another reality of the situation, they played the Detroit Lions, and we all know how bad the Detroit Lions are at stopping the run. Yes, there will be an Aaron Jones in the backfield of Jamal Williams, but I still think Ty Montgomery has an opportunity against what? The team that's given up the third most fantasy points to the running back position, also giving up the most rushing yards per game. That is the Detroit Lions for you. So I think the run game of the Packers is going to be utilized more. I think when the Packers need to throw the ball, they're going to bring in Ty Montgomery. Whether they put him out in the slot, whether they use them out of the backfield, Ty Montgomery is going to be used this week. He is going to be a valuable asset coming into week 5 of the regular season and the fantasy season. I think he has a great opportunity because the reality is everyone around him is hurt. They have a great matchup, and he's a hell of a player. So I like Ty Montgomery. Great hidden gem for this week. All right, we're moving on, shall we? Okay, the Soul Stone for this week. Good old Soul Stone. All right, so here's the thing. Good old Taywan Taylor. Now, in my opinion, Taywan Taylor is going to be the soul stone for this week because of many, I'd say one of two reasons, but mainly these two reasons can consist of why he's going to be relevant, okay? Number one, they play against the Buffalo Bills. Now, if you play against the Buffalo Bills and you're not the Minnesota Vikings, then you're not allergic to the situation. You're not going to completely get shellacked on the week, and you'll be fine. Now, one of two things I need to mention, okay? I've been hyping up Corey Davis for the last 2 weeks now, okay? And I've been saying, Corey Davis, start him. Now, on the other side of the field, you have Taywan Taylor, a guy who is, or Taywan Taylor. Okay, someone's going to bug me with that, all right? Taywan Taylor? All right, there you go. On the other side of the field, you have Taylor, who gets, I think they said 76%. I was looking through the stats. 76% of the offensive snaps from week 4 at the wide receiver position. All things considered, when it comes to targets and snaps played offensively at the wide receiver position, he is for sure the number 2 wide receiver within this offense. Now, I made a mistake and said that Rashad Matthews still plays for the Titans. That was a big oops, okay? Big oops. I'm sorry. Many of you called me out on it, all right? I apologize. Big oops. Okay, Rashad Matthews does not play for this team. He was a bum. He cried about it a couple weeks back. They released him. I forgot about it. Irrelevant, okay? My bad. My mistake. Now, Taywan Taylor this week is going to have a good opportunity because just like me, I'm hyping up Corey Davis, right? Maybe the defensive coordinators of the Bills are also hyping up Corey Davis. We got to stop Corey Davis this week. We cannot let Corey Davis do this to us and this to us. And we got to stop the run game. We got to be careful of Deion Lewis out of the backfield. Derrick Henry up the middle, blah, blah, blah. And good old silent Taywan Taylor sitting in the corner just waiting as a hidden gem for this week to pop off. He has the potential of having a good week. This past week, he had 9 targets, 7 receptions, 77 receiving yards. I think Taywan Taylor has a good opportunity in fantasy this week to outperform his projection. I like him, and that is why he's the soul stone for this week. We're moving on. All right. Man, it is really hard to use a mouse with the gauntlet on. I'm going to be honest, okay? The gauntlet, it gives me a lot of power, okay? It gives me a lot of power in fantasy football especially. But by all means, I cannot use a mouse to save my damn life, okay? I almost misclicked and deleted everything. But I could have snapped my fingers also and deleted everything. But that's a different conversation in itself. All right. As you can see on the screen, we got here the time stone. And we have Jalen Richard. Now, time is a valuable thing, right? Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch the clock, down by the end of the day. The clock ticks like the... Okay, it doesn't matter. Irrelevant. If you know where that's from, congratulations, okay? But Jalen Richard and the time stone. Why is this? This is very important, okay? There's a correlation between these two, okay? Jalen Richard only plays when the Raiders are either down late in the game, okay, time, or they are losing by a lot of points. Now, the way I see it this coming week, when the Raiders are trying to compete against this Chargers offense, and if they don't get, the ball moving into the end zone especially, the Chargers are going to consistently score. This is going to cause Jalen Richard to have to come into the game because the Raiders do not trust and they don't really want to utilize Marshawn Lynch in the passing game because that's not what he's for. Marshawn Lynch is a running back that's going to plug up the middle and just find those yards because he's behind a very, very elite offensive line, and he himself has looked fantastic as of late. But in the passing game, they absolutely utilize Jalen Richard way more than Marshawn Lynch. Late in games, Jalen Richard has been absolutely pretty dynamic. Week 1 of the regular season had about 5 minutes of playtime. The dude had 9 fantasy points. As the weeks have progressed, depending on the game script, Jalen Richard continues to be used. Now, this week, I think because of the fact that both teams have great offenses and they're going to continue to score, Jalen Richard is going to be used more. He is a guy that you should only play in very deep leagues, all right? This is the warning. The warning. Okay, for those headphones people, I'm sorry, but I have to give you the warning, okay? Jalen Richard is not a guy that you just throw into your running back 2 slot. He's a guy in, like, if you play in a 16-man league, congratulations. If you're struggling at running back, here it is. All right. This is what this video is about. I'm bringing out hidden gems, people. I'm not going to be talking about guys that you can just pick up off the waivers and instantly start. These are guys that you got to be careful about, but also they have potential. Anyway, that's Jalen Richard. That's the time stone. The last piece of the fantasy gauntlet right here in front of you, we have ourselves Mohamed Sanu. I'm excited to talk about Mohamed Sanu. Now, why am I excited to talk about him? Last but definitely not least, he's been pretty sneaky good over the last 2 weeks. Now, everyone's been talking Calvin Ridley. Oh my God, 5 touchdowns on 11 receptions. What an animal. He's fantastic. He's Matt Ryan's number 1 in the red zone. He continues to outperform himself. Him and Sark, blah, blah. Okay, I'm sick and tired of it, right? And they also keep talking about Julio. What a surprise. Okay, Julio's a monster, right? When you have 2 games this season where you had 170 receiving yards, people are going to talk about you, right? But Mohamed Sanu as of late has been really good. Now, I did a little bit of research into this, and I found a statistic that many of you are going to be surprised about, okay? Mohamed Sanu has played more offensive snaps than Julio and Calvin Ridley thus far this season. Now, that's a surprise to me, especially because it's by a lot, too. Mohamed Sanu has played more snaps than Julio Jones. Number 1, probably because of the run blocking. And number 2, because, Julio Jones ends up catching a 60-yard bomb and then has to hobble to the sideline because he fell down the wrong way. But Mohamed Sanu is playing more snaps than Calvin Ridley still with Calvin Ridley's continuous production. Now, Mohamed Sanu in the last 2 weeks has been lights out good for a wide receiver 3 spot. Listen to these stats. 16 targets, 10 receptions for 147 receiving yards, and a touchdown. In the last 2 weeks combined, he's had 27.7 half-point PPR points. Guys, Mohamed Sanu is the real deal. And by all means, I'm cursed with knowledge this week. That's what the Mind Stone gives me, right? I can see it with all my intelligence. My mind is unlocked, right? This is what this gives me. I can see that the Falcons and the Steelers are going to be in one of those barn burner, slobber knocker shootouts that people just continue to score fantasy points in. Mohamed Sanu is the guy, people. He's the guy that even if you don't own a piece of this game, here's your way in. You may not own Julio, Antonio, Juju, Connor, Devontae Freeman, Ben, Matty Ice, right? You may not own these pieces, okay? And if you're like, I own Austin Hooper. No, please, no. Stop. Okay, relax. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about legit, actual fantasy prospects here, okay? We're not talking about Austin Hooper, right? Get him out of here, okay? I don't want to see that. Get him up, get him out, okay? But Mohamed Sanu, if he's sitting on your waivers, he's a way into this game. But honestly, if he's sitting on your waivers, chances are you play in such a smaller league that you're not going to be able to utilize Mohamed Sanu, much less any of the picks that I mentioned before. So anyway, Mohamed Sanu, he's been great as of late. He plays more snaps offensively than Julio and Calvin Ridley. He's going to continue to be on the field. And as of late, 16 targets in the last 2 weeks, 7 and 9. That's really good. That really is good. So I like Mohamed Sanu as the last hidden gem for this week's Infinity Gauntlet. I want to thank all of you for watching, for sure. Now, we are super close to that 2,500 subscriber mark that I spoke about maybe a month ago. It tops 4 weeks ago, okay? I talked about when we hit 1,000 subs, I was like, guys, we're not going to go crazy. We're going to go for the 2,500 sub mark. No big deal. We can get it. And by all means, we are so close. I think we're 100 away. So this is my call to action, right? Tell your siblings, subscribe. Tell your family, subscribe. Tell your cousins, your in-laws, your friends. I understand you play in a fantasy league. You're like, okay, I don't want to tell Jim that, I found a really good, advice, blah, blah, blah. Maybe look, let's just put it this way really quickly, okay? If you don't want to tell Jim about me, maybe just like leave the tab open at his house and just see what happens, okay? Maybe I tell him to start Amari Cooper one week and he loses the week and then, he hates me. Or if you don't like me, tell more people. It's even better. Why? Because then I'll screw up their fantasy lineups and it's all good. Then you win your league, right? So there is no negative to spreading the word. Let people know that the Infinity Fantasy Gauntlet resides here at this channel. I want to thank everybody who has supported. Now, really quickly, before we end, I just got more and more stuff to talk about. I'm looking down the barrel of about 800 fantasy advice questions right now in my comment section. I swear it's 800. This is not okay, but I will try to get to them all. Honestly, if I get to your question and let's say, for example, while I'm recording this video, if someone has just put down a comment and said, do you think Mark Ingram or Devontae Freeman this week, right? Someone puts that in my thing. If I get to that question by Sunday morning, by doing questions all day, 800, I'm looking down the barrel of, right? I will be lucky. So again, patience. Other people will answer your questions. And please, guys, when you ask questions in the comments, try to be brief because there are some fat paragraphs where you're like, all right, this is my lineup. This is what I'm thinking trade-wise. This is what I've been offered. This is what the waivers have. What do you think? And I'm like, what? It's just like a literal paragraph. It's like, it's thick, okay? It's huge. But either way, thank you everybody for watching. I'll get to your questions. Have a fantastic week. Tomorrow, Saturday, McGregor, Khabib, either way. I will get to the injury video. A lot of news to talk about. So stay subscribed, and I'll see you guys. Oh, no.